What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to look at the top 10 most cheapest states to live in for 2022. These are normally when a place is cheap, a state or like a city or a town is cheap is usually never good because they have high poverty, crime, so normally people wouldn't want to live in any of these places. That's why it's so cheap. But some of this, not all of it is terrible. Like some of it, sometimes not all things are bad when cost of living is low. It's just like a good majority of it is pretty bad though. So let's see what are the 10 states that are cheap, top 10 most cheapest states for 2022. Number 10, Indiana. Indiana has some really good small towns. It's relatively safe. They also have really cheap land too. They have some good cheap land. Farmland is it can be expensive. Depends though how much land you want, but it's generally cheap. This is the cost of living rate for Indiana. Number 9, Tennessee. Tennessee is a pretty poor state, honestly. They have one of the higher poverty rates in the U.S. Memphis is a really bad city and stuff, and they have some really cheap neighborhoods in Memphis, but are also really dangerously scary neighborhoods. I can't lie about you on this one though, but Tennessee has some incredible landscapes. It's beautiful in the rural and stuff. They got some cheap rural towns too. It's very cheap there. This is their rate, cost of living rate. Number 8, Georgia. Georgia has some really great small towns that are at a great price and stuff, a good cost of living. Atlanta's a bit more expensive, but like the rural parts of it are dirt cheap and stuff. Like land is pretty cheap here. Just depends though. Like if you want land in the mountains, it might be a little more expensive. But like if you want like regular land or like farmland, it'll be a little cheaper. This is their cost of living rate. Number 7, New Mexico. This one kind of shocked me. Like I actually thought New Mexico was kind of a more of the expensive side because their alcohol tax, their sales tax is kind of high, like 5% to 9%. But New Mexico's not terribly expensive though for a southwestern state. They got a lot of nice small towns and stuff. Albuquerque is a little expensive, but Albuquerque is a pretty dangerous city. So like the neighborhoods are bad there, and it's so cheap. But they have those desert bucket towns and stuff that are pretty cheap. Land is cheap. This is New Mexico's cost of living rate. Number 6, Alabama. This was one of the positive videos when I did the top 10 reasons to move to Alabama was the cost of living. Their houses are pretty cheap. They have some really bad areas that are really dirt cheap, like bad areas in Alabama. Like parts of Birmingham is a lot of Birmingham is bad, but it's a pretty cheap city to live in. It's like under $1,000 to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Birmingham. This is Alabama's cost of living rate. Number 5, Missouri. I really like Missouri. The only things bad about Missouri is that they have like Kansas City, St. Louis, and Springfield. That's what brings the whole state down. But they have pretty good, nice rural towns that are pretty cheap. I would recommend Branson, Missouri. It's a pretty nice place. I've been there before. I went there like a couple of years back. It was pretty nice. This is Missouri's cost of living rate. Number 4, Arkansas. Arkansas has always been a really cheap place to live in because it's so dangerous and it's run down too and has a very high poverty. Don't get me wrong though, the state is absolutely beautiful. Like I've driven through it to get to Missouri. The northern part is beautiful. I like the northern part more than the south part. The southern part is a mess and stuff. But the Ozarks are beautiful. This is Arkansas's cost of living rate right here. Number 3, Oklahoma. OKC is pretty cheap for a major city, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa, Oklahoma is pretty cheap too. Like the average home price maybe around $175,000. Farmland is pretty cheap there. Like if you want to buy land, it's pretty cheap in Oklahoma, and gas prices are pretty cheap. Well, they were. This is their cost of living rate. Number 2, Kansas. Kansas, same thing. It has a lot of farmland and everything. Land is very cheap. Cost of living is very cheap. The cities are pretty cheap too. Actually, the cities are, I wouldn't say pretty cheap, but it's decently cheap and stuff. It's pretty cheap to buy a house there. This is their cost of living rate, Kansas. Before we go on, number 1, hit the like and share and subscribe button and the bell button where you can get notifications and you don't have to miss a video. And number 1, Mississippi. Yup, our first cheapest state is Mississippi. Mississippi is a very dirt cheap place to live in. Their population is actually shrinking. The reason why is because 1, they have crime. They have a high crime rate, and 2, they do have very low paying jobs, and 3, it's high poverty. Like they have a lot of poor people in Mississippi. This is Mississippi's cost of living rate. And that was it. Mississippi's our cheapest state for 2022. Thank you for watching. I know my channel's been kind of slow for the past month or 2. I've just been real busy, but I'm gonna try to upload a little more and keep those views going up, please. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.